So I think the passion, at least, from a personal point of view, is actually just curiosity of knowing and learning new market.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by J Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley in partnership with Leumi Tech and sponsored by Hippo Insurance, Turing, Upwest Labs, and Hillel at Stanford. I'm very excited to introduce you to today's guest, Yuval Cohen, founder and managing partner at StageOne Ventures. Yuval Cohen is the founder and managing partner at StageOne Ventures, leading investments across multiple investment sectors. He has a track record of 2 decades in leading the operations of early-stage VCs. Before founding StageOne, he co-founded and managed 2 corporate VCs as part of IDB, Israel's largest conglomerate, estimated at $150 million in the investment portfolio, and was personally involved in early-stage IT investing totaling over $1 billion in exit value. Yuval currently represents StageOne on several company boards, including Otonomo, Silverfort, Epsagon, Thetor, CommonGround, Model 9, and Cover. Yuval Cohen, welcome to 20-Minute Leaders, all the way from Tel Aviv, StageOne VC. How are you?
I'm great. Here in Tel Aviv, post-vaccine.
Yes. Hopefully, we'll soon get everybody to that level. But right now, we can talk about Corona and all that stuff. But what I really want to focus on is your journey. One of the top investors in Israel, StageOne VC, one of the top VC firms in Israel, and just from starting to take a look at the different initiatives you've been a part of and the different VCs that you've been a part of. This is not the first one. You've had quite a few beforehand. I'm insanely curious to pick your brain and go in there and start understanding, how your thought process works. Where did you start from? Why do you decide to become an investor? And how do you go about, your day by day figuring out how to back the best and the brightest in the best industries as well? So Yuval, take me back. Why become an investor? What was the plan on becoming a VC?
Frankly, there was no plan. So basically, I grew up in France, in Paris, came to Israel just before my military service, spent about 5 years with the IDF. And then after studying in the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, I did a kind of a mix of law school and an MBA in corporate finance. And I found myself almost by mistake in one of Israel's largest conglomerates, at that time, IDB. And I joined the...
But Yuval, I think you skipped over something.
Which one?
You started off as a bellboy at a hotel.
Yeah, that's right. I started as a bellboy. I mean, just after coming to Israel, I had a few months before military service, and I wanted to earn some money. I spent about 6 months working as a checker and bellboy in an hotel in Jerusalem. And believe me, it's a kind of a lesson for life. I mean, you see, really interesting stories. But anyway, it was a pretty nice experience. And then I joined the army, as I said.
Well, what do you take from there to now?
I pick that, and I think that the lesson, that actually goes from those days till today, that everything is about people. It's all about people. When you look, the interaction, between people is both on a personal level and on the business level, but you need to communicate. And later on, I'll tell you, why I decided to focus on the seed stage, because I think it's part of the story. So anyway, I started my career in IDB, just at that time, I think one of the largest groups in Israel, if not the largest one. And almost by coincidence, I joined the capital market division, and I was pretty fascinated by public markets and option trading. And that's what we started back then, a mix of investment banking and kind of brokerage. And all of a sudden, I don't even remember why, but the market crashed worldwide. I want to believe it's not because of me. But anyway, what happened is that we had, to reinvent ourselves at that time. And it was, the mid 90s. Very few tech companies in Israel. You might recall ECI, Cytex, and those giants.
Yes.
Most of the tech, by the way, was telecom oriented.
Right.
We decided, after a trip to New York, I came back, we came back, and I remember, that the head of the division, presented a senior person that spent several years in the Bay Area, and he said, this guy will be leading a kind of corporate fund for IDB. By the way, corporate fund, it was actually maybe one of the first in the country at that time. And
Right.
I teamed up with two other partners, and we actually set the first fund, and then we set a second fund as part of IDB. These were terrific years, to invest in the telecom sector and the enterprise software in Israel, mainly for two reasons. There was, just 6-7 years before the internet boom. Second, a lot of knowledge that actually, basically, it was more like military knowledge that got commercialized from the army and went to different sectors.
Right.
And that's the story of the Israeli high tech, of course. But anyway, very
At
few.
that point, do you know?
Sorry?
Do you feel that Israel is going to become the powerhouse that it is destined to become? Is that something in the day to day of an investor in your position? Do you see that trajectory? Is that obvious, or is this something that it wasn't that obvious to happen?
It wasn't obvious at all. I remember, the first founders, that we backed were pure engineer, zero business experience, and not only zero business experience, it was more, no international experience at all. What happened is that, luckily enough, we've been focusing on the deep tech, that you mentioned at the very beginning. And this was actually a decision that we took after analyzing the market and seeing, that the major advantages of the Israeli ecosystem are the technology, the manpower, the engineers. I always say that the 300 multinational companies that have their R&D centers here in Israel are looking for the Israeli engineer and not necessarily the Israeli sales and marketing person. And by the way, it hasn't changed since then. And we decided to focus on those sectors. We backed a bunch of pretty successful companies. Funny enough, the first fund was pretty successful. The second one was less successful. And the reason is that actually we raised a much larger fund. The second one was much larger, very diversified. We started investing in mid to late stages as well. And then after a period of 7 years, the idea, within the group was to form a third fund that, of course, would be larger, like most of the funds all over the world. And for me, it was a kind of red flag. At that time, I felt pretty senior. I just crossed the 32. I was 32 at that time. And I was stupid enough to say, okay, let's leave it and start basically a kind of boutique. And that's how I teamed up with a founder that I backed several years before, that was a pretty successful person, Adoram Gash. And together we started StageOne.
Take me to that day. So, I talked to a lot of startup founders talking about, okay, how do you bring the team together? How do you come up with product market fit? It sounds to me that forming a venture capital fund is not that different. You need the right team. You need to find product market fit with your thesis, with who to back and how to back them and how to get, the right deal flow. And at the end, you're talking about deep technology, the better due diligence you do, the better your product will be, the better sort of, quote unquote, returns will come to the fund. So share with me, your way. You're sitting down with a founder that you previously backed. What happens?
So what happened? I mean, we said in a pretty naive approach, we're gonna look at three major pillars, and I'll talk about those pillars later on. And we're gonna start a fund, a small one, basically, that would invest and follow these three major pillars or guidelines. And we said, okay, if that's the case, what are we missing? It was pretty clear that I'm bringing more, the financial slash business experience, while my partner was bringing more the technical aspects and the network. I didn't served in 8200, so and he did. So actually, it was a good fit, and we decided to start a fund that basically would invest in Israel and Israeli entrepreneurs. So in some cases, these are Israeli entrepreneurs that are based in the US that have the R&D center in Israel. But in most cases, this would be companies here in Israel. Second, we do seed only. I mean, we start from the very beginning. I know that many funds, talk about the early stage. Early stage became a pretty flexible definition. So for us, early stage
Right.
means that I would say that in more than 90%, I know, of our companies, we are the first and only check around the table.
Wow.
In most cases, we actually register the company together with the founders. So that's how early we are willing
That's
to go.
That's amazing.
And the third part of the strategy was to be very focused on what we called B2B infrastructure. So everything that would go to the infrastructure of medium to large enterprises was, and it's still of interest to us. No B2C, no, actually, of course, medical, biotech. We invest in sectors that we've known for many years. Under that umbrella, we started so far 3 funds. My initial partners actually left to run one of our portfolio companies back in 2006.
Actually, wow.
Relocated to the US with that company. Since then, by the way, he came back to Israel. And in 2013, Tal Slobodkin joined me. I met Tal while he was representing Cisco in one of our portfolio companies. And that's how we met. He represented Cisco at that time. And we felt, again, that it's a good fit. By the way, Tal is younger than I by more than 10 years. So it's these are the kind of very different entrepreneur that we are approaching. For me, it's more like, second timers or sometimes even third timers. And while Tal brings more, the network from the army. After spending more than 10 years, and a very strong technical background.
Yuval, can you take me back to the first investment or one of the first investments that you need to make as a team? And I'm trying to picture, this new venture fund forming. You're forming it with people that might not have necessarily, invested money in the past. It's a different, work environment. Is it an easy decision? Like, do you have to sort of convince each other? Is it, everybody agrees, or maybe one partner just really likes it, and so everybody just, goes with the flow? How do you define sort of the structure under which you agree as an investment committee to go into a deal? And I'm especially curious about, the root of it, how you even form the strategy of coming up with this method.
So, frankly, since seed investing is pretty risky, and although we try to be very focused on some sectors, and we believe we are pretty familiar with those sectors, it's still pretty risky. I mean, we invest basically in 2-3 founders with a one pager in most cases. And
Wow.
what it was never discussed, on a formal / legal level that we're gonna take a decision to a unanimous vote. But
Wow.
I don't know why and how to explain it. But as a fact, in most cases, I mean, we voted together. And I always say, I mean, seed is so risky that if one of the partners feels, I mean, that we shouldn't do it, so let's keep it. I know that there are different approaches, by the way, in much larger funds. I know that in some cases, some of the partners can take a decision. I mean, a kind of majority vote or something like that. For us, I mean, it worked pretty well in the unanimous approach. And if we felt that by now we have 4 members in our investment committee, 2 venture partners, and one, I mean, Tal and myself make it 4. And if one of those 4 doesn't feel comfortable with the investment, in most cases, we'll skip it.
Right. No, that
Now,
makes
I cannot tell you that that's the right approach or the bad one, but it worked for us. I mean, I think that overall, almost 50 companies, 50 by now, 16 companies in the first fund, 6 exits in the first fund, 16 companies in fund 2.
Wow.
With 2.5 exits. We are one of our companies just announced a SPAC merger back in January.
Amazing.
A company called Otonomo. And the third fund, which is a 2018 vintage, we invested so far in 13 companies. So for us, I mean, almost 50 companies, it worked pretty well. But frankly, I mean, there are other approaches as well.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. And, Yuval, one of the things that I love, particularly about this show is tapping into the inner motivations and your partners, from what I understand, some of them chose, they went from founders and entrepreneurs to the VC world. Some went back to the business world and the private specific company. What gets you going? Why invest in 50 companies, 50 companies? Why go for the 51st? What is it about the 51st adventure that makes you as excited to do it? Because of all people, know that it's passion that drives to success very often, right? And you want to invest in passionate people, and you also want to be passionate yourself. So where is that passion coming from?
So I think the passion, at least from a personal point of view, is actually just curiosity of knowing and learning new markets. In most cases, and that's what is basically fascinating in the VC industry. In most cases, I would meet people that are clever than us, know their domain much better than us,
Right.
and actually can take you to and offer you to join their journeys. So I always, I mean, I've been, it was a kind of fascinating to see some of these entrepreneurs taking that are maybe expert in optics or other fields in semiconductor or in cloud computing that basically want to change the world. And for me, I mean, it was kind of learning a new industry, a new market. I can share with you a few examples. I mean, when we first invested in Otonomo, the car data platform, frankly, we're very far from being experts in the car industry.
Right.
But we felt, I mean, that when you look at the technology, that data would be a big issue in that sector and change that industry. The same goes, by the way, with a more recent investment that we made in a company called Theater in the digital health arena. So, I mean, we're fascinated by the technology, by the computer vision technology there, and the fact that it can actually change an industry and a sector that we are not familiar with. But the moment, I mean, you identify a good technology and you need to apply it to a sector that is kind of greenfield. So that's the passion. I mean, the passion is to join this journey very early, to take it from seed to early sales. And frankly, I think that after that stage, there are many other investors, I mean, that can take the lead. And I'm pretty sure that you have participated in those board meetings when a company starts selling. So very fast it became, more like reporting on the quarterly results,
Right.
and that's it. So we are more interested, and I'm more interested in really building the company from scratch, helping the founders, understanding, by the way, that we are the co-pilot.
Yeah.
The pilot is the founder. We are here, I mean, to give advice, I mean, not because we are smarter, because I've seen and I've been in those situations 25 or 30 times, while in most cases for the founders or a group of founders, it's the first time for them. So we are trying to advise. Sometimes we are successful, sometimes we're not. But at the end, that's the founder's show.
Amazing. Yuval, I want to thank you for being so kind and generous to come on the show. I really appreciate it, and I know how busy you are. I love the curious nature that you're bringing onto this, and you're saying yes. You could look at me as an investor. You can also just look at me as somebody who's deeply curious about different markets, about meeting amazing people, and being a co-pilot of these different entrepreneurs who I believe in. And helping them, figure out, and through the trenches, how to get to this, point where you can turn your board meetings into quarterly reports versus the magical work that you're doing there. So thank you for sharing with me that. I have the most important final question. I don't know if it's the most important, but it's definitely the final question, which is 3 words used to describe yourself.
Never give up. Which
Course.
Basically, it's not only when it's described. I think I would like to believe that it describes me, but it describes StageOne as well. I mean, we've crossed many crises over 20 years. The fund would celebrate its 20th anniversary this year.
Wow!
And I've seen 3 crises during that time. And I remember in 2008, the world, I mean, looked pretty bad. And we said, okay, I mean, it's going to improve and we shouldn't give up on our portfolio. And it goes, the same in 2001 when we really started. So basically, I think that the motto here is really never give up.
Yuval, toda rabba. Thank you very, very much. Stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you and take care. Bye-bye.